Hello and welcome to AI Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
In spectacular fashion. How are you?
I'm good. I'm top of the league, Karl. I'm 6 points clear with the game in hand. So, what have I got to worry about?
Not much at all.
It is, of course, deadline day today, or as Liverpool fans know it, Monday. But there are moves happening, contrary to what we've been told. You can actually buy players in this transfer window. So thought we'd fly around, have a look at what's going on and who's done what they're rumored to be looking to do, and you know, see if there's anything that is of interest. Arsenal, as yet, have done nothing. They've been linked to a bunch of players, but right now it doesn't look like the forward that their fans have been crying out for and that Arteta has been crying out for is going to arrive. They've had bids turned down for Watkins. They were linked with Tell. That's not happening now. They were linked with Sesko. It appears he'll stay where he is till the summer. Just on them without any moves happening, what do you make of the decision not to do anything? Because clearly the manager wanted a player in.
So it feels club-wise a little bit like Liverpool did in years gone by, where, there's a lot of noise around us looking at people and making inquiries and monitoring and all that good sort of stuff that happens before actually anything happens at all. And then nothing actually happens at all. It was like that for quite a long time for Liverpool. And I know that, we're not doing anything now, but we're also not making any noises of doing anything now.
Mm.
That's quite a big difference rather than the what we used to get, where it was like, oh yeah, we're talking to this person and we seem to be making an inquiry over this one, but it wasn't the right deal and blah blah blah. And that kind of feels where Arsenal are at the minute. So I'm not massively surprised that they're not buying anyone. We spoke about it a little while ago, and I did say that, like, I get like they want a striker or they want a number nine, a guaranteed scorer, blah blah blah. But I don't see how that fits in what they already have. Like
No.
someone who not only contributes to the goals but is all around better than Kai Havertz. Like I said, I only think that maybe a left winger, stroke someone who can be a bit versatile, is the only real reasonable addition for them, especially mid-season. And it doesn't look like that'll be the case either.
That's the thing. And one thing people always forget is that clubs are hesitant to sell in January. And when you're a top club, there's a very limited pool of players you can buy from. And a lot of those players play for clubs who, at this stage in the season, have a lot to play for, potentially a Champions League spot or a Europa League spot, or maybe they're eyeing a cup run, or just they're already in Europe and are looking for a good second half of the season. So those clubs don't always want to sell in January, and therefore it limits who you can get and what you can get. So it looks like they'll keep their powder dry until summer. One club who's been very busy so far is Aston Villa, and I have to say I don't love it. So they sold John Duran, they sold Jaden Philligan, they sold Diego Carlos. I did like that one because I don't think he's any good. They loaned out a bunch of players, including Emi Buendia and the young Serbian right back Nedeljkovic, who's gone to Leipzig on a loan with an option to buy, which just seems like Villa giving up very quickly on a really talented player. But they did bring in another young right back in Andreas Garcia from Levante. They signed Daniel Malin for 25 million. I'm not massively keen on that one. I don't think he was particularly good for Dortmund. The most interesting thing they did was bring in Marcus Rashford on loan with an option to buy for 40 million. I want to talk about that one. But then you look at what they're also been rumored to be doing. It looks like Marco Asensio's going there on loan, which I really don't get. They've been linked with João Felix, which again, I'm kind of struggling to comprehend. They've turned down a bid for Watkins, and they want a centre back. They've got a deal agreed with Disasi, but Chelsea don't want him to go to Villa because they don't want him to go to a Champions League rival. They would prefer him to go to Spurs. So it remains to see what happens with that one. It looked like they were going to get Loic Bade. That's fallen apart. I'm not really sure I like much of this, but I'm interested in the Rashford thing just to see if away from United he somehow cops on and is able to be something like the Marcus Rashford that he's shown himself to be capable of.
I mean, it's super interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't really know where I stand with this right now, Rashford. Like, I can see that, you know, 6 months from now, or whatever, there's going to be a whole bunch of the signing photos held up and people going, look at his face, he never wanted to be there, blah blah blah. Um, I don't think Rashford is a very, very good forward. I don't think he's been a very, very good forward for a long time. I'm not talking about elite level here because he's never been that, but let's just talk about, generally really good centre forwards or wing forwards or whatever you see him as his best role as. I don't think he's a very, very good one. He's had a couple of very, very good years, but basically speaking, I don't love his career history, let's say. I wouldn't be looking at him as a £40 million player. I think he's better than, let's compare him to Daniel Marlon because they've played some similar roles in similar sorts of setups, and there is some overlap of their talents. But Marlon was a lot lower price. Like, I don't think Marlon's a great player, but for a team who is trying to improve what they've got available to them, need a bit of a bigger squad if they're going to be in Europe more often, and so on and so forth. I don't think 20 million is a bad fee, 25 million, in terms of beefing the squad up. I don't think he'll be a starter. Rashford obviously is capable of being a starter, but not if he plays anything like he has for 2 years more. Like, he hasn't been good. I'm not talking about he hasn't been at his best. He hasn't even been good.
No, no, it's been a long time since you could argue Marcus Rashford was good. Now, I would make a slight case in his defence that
Enormous case in his defence. It's the team he was playing for.
this is the thing. Like, if I'm looking at United, and I did this on 2-Footed a while back, I went through every player they've signed post Ferguson. And other than like free transfers, like the Zlatan thing, the Cavani thing, Johnny Evans, like where they got a bit of kind of surprise value, I think I only had about 4 or 5 players that they'd signed for real money that you could say had been good for them. So Bruno was an obvious one. Delot was an obvious one. It was too early to judge like this summer's players. But I can't even remember who the others were because there's been that many players signed over the years. Like I think they're about 1.8 billion or something in spend since Ferguson left. It's a laughable amount of money.
Like, I do agree with that, and like, of course, that plays into it in terms of the coaches as well, and systemically what you're asking Rashford to do, and all the rest of it. But that doesn't impact on efforts. That doesn't impact on his ability to cleanly strike a ball from good positions. It doesn't impact on his ability to actually get in those good positions in regularity. We're looking at a forward here, a forward of whatever description you plan to give him, who has had one good season out of 3.5 years. And that was with, I wouldn't even say an attack-minded side. It was a very, very counter-attacking team, and he had a great year in goal-scoring terms. But playing-wise, leave the goals aside. Playing-wise, contribution-wise to the team, reliability in terms of performance level. How many outside of that season have come in the last 3.5 years?
This is the thing. This is the thing. And the effort thing is what's most striking because, like, I always looked at Marcus Rashford in the early days of his career and thought, like, he could be dynamite under Klopp because he had the work rate, he had the skill set that you thought, at 20, 21, 22 could be really molded into something. And he just kind of has flatlined and then declined. And you hear really negative things coming out about his effort levels in training. And I watched the recent episode of The Overlap when they had Wayne Rooney on. And Rooney obviously played with Rashford, the end of Rooney's career, the start of Rashford's career. And Neville was obviously there as well. And they were both talking about their personal experiences with Rashford. Rooney from having trained with him with United, Neville from his own connections at United, plus when he had him with England, when Roy was manager and Rashford made his kind of sort of breakthrough for England. And they were just both stunned at the fact that effort was something being leveled at Marcus Rashford at this point because of what a good trainer he used to be. But I do wonder if it's maybe just a thing where he's had a look around at that club and thought, well, nobody else gives a shit. Like, you've got so many lads that have just phoned it in for United over the years. And the most notable of them all is Paul Pogba, who they signed for close. I think at the time it was a world record fee, and then Neymar broke it. But it was a world record fee, enormous wages, enormous signing bonuses, all the rest. And he came in and just completely skated for the entirety of his time there and then left on a free as if it was nothing. And other than Mourinho, nobody ever seemed to try and pull Pogba up on that. And when Mourinho did it, he got dog's abuse from people in the media, from the fan base. And you're just like, has Rashford seen that and thought, well, if he's going to do this and he came for 90 million, why should I care? Now, that's obviously, again, a bad attitude thing, but I do just wonder if he's seen enough players come and go through the place who've just skated and thought, well, what's the point? I also think a big factor in it, now, I could be wrong, but Rashford's fall off coincided with Sancho's fall out with Ten Hag. It was around that same time that Rashford just really fell off the face of the earth, and there started to be question marks over his attitude. And obviously there was questions over Sancho's effort level and attitude. And I do wonder if there's a link there, if maybe Sancho rubbed off on Rashford, or maybe Rashford got the hump of how his best mate, who signed for the club because of him, was treated. Now, again, these are things that are concerning from an attitude point of view, but none of it looks good on Rashford or United.